unless you're prompted to speak. Thank you. In order for this meeting to run smoothly, I ask that you do not speak out of turn and wait to be recognized before speaking. As a matter of protocol, please always state your name first when you begin to speak. During the various public hearings, I will recognize the petitioner at the appropriate time, and any questions from the public that were submitted to the village would be heard. These aren't public hearings, so in this case, public comments will be reserved until the end of the meeting. Those wishing to follow along with the PowerPoint are encouraged to access the meeting through the Tinley Park Television live streaming now on YouTube. At this time, allow me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Commissioner Eduardo Manny.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Stanton.
Present.
Commissioner Jim Gaskell.
Here.
Commissioner Kayla West.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Barbara Bennett, Commission Secretary.
Present.
Paula Walrick, Planning Manager.
Present.
Dan Ritter, Senior Planner.
Here.
Please note, throughout the meeting, we expect to have other individuals joining us via phone call pertaining to specific agenda items. This meeting is a remote meeting, so thank you in advance for your patience and cooperation. The open meeting of the Village of Tinley Park is being conducted remotely, and this is consistent with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-07, issued on March 16, 2020, which suspends the Open Meetings Act provisions relating to the person attendance by members of a public body. Specifically, the Governor's Order 1 suspends the requirement in Section 2.01 that members of a public body must be physically present. And, number 2, suspends the limitations in Section 7 on when remote participation is allowed. The Open Meetings Act, OMA, requires public bodies to allow for public comment. Participants on the phone call are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those people are not required to identify themselves. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating via web or audio conference. All of the materials for this meeting are available on the Village's website, and we recommend the members and the public follow the agenda as posted. The meeting is also live streamed through the Tinley Park Television, on YouTube. Before turning to the first item, let's cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. As chairperson, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Hold your comments until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone when you are not speaking, to also speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes, and also to start your comment with your name to identify yourself. For any response or comment on any item, please wait until I yield the floor to you. And if members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through me, first identifying yourself and then making your request. After the members have spoken, I will afford public comment at the very end of the meeting because it's a workshop for both items. The general public was, that's it. Finally, simple voice votes will be taken by asking only if there are any commissioners who are opposed to the motion that has been made. Votes on the item motions will be conducted by roll call vote. Commission Secretary, please call the roll at this time.
Stanton?
Yes.
Manny?
Yeah.
Gaskell?
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Aitchison? Engel? Gatto? Vic? Chairman Gray?
Yes. We have a quorum. Let us now begin with the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 7, 2020 meeting?
Commissioner Stanton, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Gaskell, second.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Stanton, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. This is Chairman Gray again. The first item on tonight's agenda is a workshop to consider recommending that the Village Board grant Alexandra Ligas, the property owner, map amendment for rezoning from the zoning code for the property located at 16651 Teresa Lane. Upon annexation, the parcel is proposed to be zoned R6, medium density residential. We will begin with an overview of the project and a workshop discussion. Staff, please make your presentation on this item.
Thanks, Chairman Gray. This is Dan. So the item, like you said, is 16651 Teresa Lane. We're really reviewing what zoning district this is going to go into. So it's currently an unincorporated property in unincorporated Cook County. They've petitioned for annexation. So then the Plan Commission's role is really to look at what zoning district is appropriate for this land, for the parcel in general. You want to go to the next slide? The existing site, so the site's currently developed. It has a 4-unit, 2.5-story, 4-unit condo building or apartment building on the site, as well as a garage in the rear. So this is currently unincorporated. Now go to the next slide. So as a history on this, it was an unincorporated farmhouse that was built around 1940 and was demoed in about 1987 on this lot. The rest of the surrounding area basically developed and was annexed into the village of Tinley Park through that time. So as everything else got annexed in, this remained an occupied single-family home. It is a general policy, or historically, the village hasn't forcibly annexed occupied homes from a resident unless there's some larger reason for it. So it basically remained unoccupied through that whole time, through its demolition in 1987. In 1995 and then in 1996, the developer came forward to build what's out there now. They came to the village of Tinley Park. It seems like at that time there was an error on both sides, assuming that this lot was annexed into the village of Tinley Park. So both the village and the developer moved forward with this under the assumption it was in the village. So it went through the Long Range Plan Commission, which is essentially this commission now, the Plan Commission. In 1996, went through our permit process. It had inspections. It's connected to our utilities. So all signs point to everyone assumed this was built in the village. Fast forward to today, and it's essentially been getting village services for this whole time, not in the village of Tinley Park. So the summary of this is basically this is kind of staff-driven project here to get this annexed and zoned properly, get it on the village tax rolls so that way, the services those residents are receiving are getting paid for through the correct property taxes. You want to go to the next slide? There is one parcel on this property. It's basically an outlot in the front that actually is annexed into the village in zoned R6. To the north and to the east of this are zoned R6 as well. Those are kind of similar, 4 to 8 unit multifamily residential buildings, most of them 2.5 stories. That happens to kind of the northwest as well. To the south of this are townhomes and then there's a single-family home as well across 167th Street. And then to the west of this is a ATI physical therapy that's zoned B4, which is our office and service business district. So if you're looking at the map, you can just kind of naturally see that this was assumed to be zoned R6, and that obviously kind of fits. It completes the block as R6. It was developed as R6, and the property as a whole complies with that. Do you want to go to the next slide? So again, this has largely been staff-driven. We talked to the petitioner. They are voluntarily annexing it into the village to avoid any loss of service to the residents, as well as avoid needing to look at any other options to annex this property. So they've been compliant. They're not on the phone, but they have voluntarily annexed. So and agree with that zoning district as well. So they'll be asking for annexation, and then that R6 zoning district. There are no planned changes to the site. Next slide. The 1996 approved site plan. So because this went through a full plan commission process, essentially in 1996, under the assumption this was in the village, we actually have approved site plans. We have approved elevations. We go to the next slide. So nothing's going to change in terms of the development of the site. The only change from that original site plan was essentially the parking in the back has changed a little bit due to a complaint that looked like it was like 1998 from the neighboring residents that there's a multi-family unit to the east of this where those headlights were shining into their windows, so they kind of angled the cars and the parking a little bit so that they had avoided it. But otherwise, this will remain how it is today. We don't have any major property maintenance issues out there. It's still attractively landscaped and seems to be well maintained. So that's it for the staff report.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So is the petitioner present for and would like to have anything to add at this time?
They're not on the line, so they've largely left this up to staff to kind of shepherd it through the process. They're in agreement for it, but they're not on the line, and they don't have any comment.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. No problem, Dan. We at this time will ask the commissioners if they have any comments or discussion on this item, beginning with Commissioner Manny.
No comments from me.
Commissioner Stanton. Commissioner Stanton.
No comment.
Commissioner Gaskell.
Nothing at this time.
Commissioner West.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. And I have no comments as well. I just think it's a very good idea to get that into the village. So staff, can you please review any open items on this request at this time?
I don't believe we have any open items, so it sounds like this is largely just kind of cleaning up an error that's long overdue. So.
Okay. With that, this was the workshop for this request, item number 1. There will be a public hearing on this matter at the Thursday, June 18th, 2020, regularly scheduled Plan Commission meeting. Okay. Moving on to item number 2, a workshop for 6800 159th Street, Delta Sonics, the site plan, special use variations, and plat of easement. This is the final item on tonight's agenda, and it, as I said, is a workshop to consider recommending that the village board grant James Baglioli, on behalf of Delta Sonic Car Wash System Incorporated, the property owner, an amendment to the existing special use ordinance number 88 and variations, structure setbacks, lighting, parking, and signage to allow for the expansion of the Delta Sonic Detail Center and convenience store on the property located at 6800 159th Street in the B3 General Business and Commercial Zoning District. Site plan approval and a final plat approval will also be reviewed with this item. We will begin with a workshop discussion. Staff, please make your presentation on this item at this time.
Thanks, Chairman. It's Dan again. So this is the Delta Sonic Car Wash, 159th and Oak Park Avenue. I assume most people that have lived or worked in the village have driven by this location or seen it. So they're making some changes to the site, and I'll just kind of note ahead of time that well known in town, and if you live around there or drive through there, as we knew, basically the petitioner and staff kind of knew ahead of time that there is some traffic congestion issues on the site on busy days. So we took that into special consideration as we were working through this project. The project's goal is really also to one, clean up the site and hopefully help some of the site circulation, as well as they had a need to expand the detail center that's in the rear of the property, as well as the convenience store needed to basically have an ADA compliant bathroom. So a small addition on that building helps them obtain enough space in there and not lose any product space, since it's a fairly small convenience store to start with. So if you want to go through the next couple slides, you'll see the existing site, and then that's essentially what we're working towards on the proposed rendering. So again, the site's a 1.59 acre site on 159th Street. This was originally developed in 1988 by Delta Sonic Car Wash, so they're the original developer, and annexed it in as well in 1988. They were relatively new to the area at that time, so I think the expectation of the size of their sites and their services, as well as what they're known for, has kind of grown over time since 1988. And it's as good as a busy site, but that's good because it's become successful. I think they've got a good business model there with their unlimited car washes that I know a lot of people in town utilize and in the area. So they've had the car wash as well as fuel pumps, a convenience store, and then the other kind of aspect of it, again, is this interior detail to go with the car wash aspect of this. In 1995 is when they expanded that rear detail center that exists there now, that they're going to propose to tear down as part of this project. The site's zoned B3, which is our general business and commercial district. To the north of this is the Trinity Lutheran Cemetery. It's zoned B3 as well, but is an active cemetery at the moment. But there's not much there besides the cemetery. To the west of this is zoned R2 and is the Trinity Lutheran Church and School building, as well as the parking lot. For that site, churches are pretty much every church in town is zoned in a residential district like that. So it sticks out a little bit for the area to be zoned residential, but that's kind of the one. A residential zoning district is essentially what churches are permitted in. To the south of this is the Menard Shopping Center, as well as the outlots there that include Brown's Chicken on the corner and Golden Corral. To the east of this is the city of Oak Forest. They have a Shell gas station that's zoned similar to the village's B3 zoning district in Oak Forest. Next slide. So in the zoning district in the location on 159th and Oak Park Avenue. Next slide. So the petitioner is proposing to make some changes here, basically to modernize the site. They've done some of that already over the last few years, but nothing major that changed the site. So they've upgraded the canopy. It's a little bit newer than what you saw in those existing pictures. So they've updated the canopy as well as the pumps. They've replaced the tanks and the asphalt in the parking lot. So they've done some kind of the behind the scenes work to upgrade the site and kind of modernize it. They're doing this across a lot of their stores in the area and the nation. So this site's relatively small compared to most of their Delta Sonics. Some of their other ones have oil change services and other kind of larger services not offered on this site. They quite honestly don't have the room here to kind of expand to add those services, but it maintains a busy site. So they've got the existing special use that was granted in 1988, and so they're proposing to make some changes, specifically expanding the convenience store building and then tearing down and replacing the detail center in the rear with a larger building. So automobile service stations or a gas station as well as car washes are both special uses in the B3 zoning district. Even though they have the existing special use, since they're expanding these uses, they're changing what the original proposal was. They have to come basically back before you guys to make sure those changes are still in line with the standards for a special use, and there's no other issues that basically get caused by those changes. I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is an overview of the site. You can see up on the north side for the top of this site plan is where you'll see the new detail center, and then on the convenience store further to the bottom of the page, you'll see the small addition on the convenience store side, and then to the west of this, you'll see a significantly different layout than what's there now in terms of the stacking lanes and the entrance to the car wash. So those are kind of the big three changes that they're doing to this site. You can also see, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, the sidewalks that are running along Oak Park Avenue as well as 159th Street. So they'll be adding in sidewalks into this on this property as well. Next slide. The existing convenience store is 1,295 square feet, so they're just adding on a 131 square foot addition between that building and then where there's kind of that center pillar that has their signage on it and connects to the canopy. So it's a small addition, but what that does is give them a little bit of extra square footage to move their counter to that south side of the convenience store building, and then expand the bathroom to be ADA compliant. So that's kind of their goal of this. They also get the advantage of that desk also having better visibility to the pumps in the front then as well. So this is really just taking up kind of dead space that's there now. It's a sidewalk with a little bit of storage. I believe they have propane there now that they responded they'd be removing. If they decide to bring it back, they'll have to show us on the site plan how it complies with our outside storage requirements, also collision protection. But for now, they haven't shown that on the site plan. And if you see, so the blue that's up in the upper corner of this is where the new bathroom will be, and then the red is where the addition is, and that's where the new counter will be. Next slide. The detailing shops on the top side of this property, and that currently is around 2,456 square feet. So they're going to demolish that and then construct a new detail center over there that's around 7,834 square feet. They're not planning on expanding any services here, just the same services, but it'll give them a little bit more room to operate where they can do an express detail, which is their kind of most popular service, and then they have additional stalls for kind of the advanced services they already offer, but this gives them a little bit more room to kind of operate vehicles, I believe, within that space. So this also kind of draws out the front of the building, and you'll kind of see when we get into the architecture, it gives it a little bit of a better frontage now along Oak Park Avenue. There is a setback, two setback variances related to this addition, though, so they are only set back 5 feet from the property lines. So it's a little bit difficult in terms of how you interpret the front and side yards on a lot like this, but for our definitions, you have a 10-foot north property line, and that is the side yard of this property, and so they're going from the 10-foot requirement to 5 feet, and then the rear yard setback requirement is typically 25 feet, and they're asking for 5 feet there as well. So they maintain the 5 feet so that way they can kind of maintain their building, they can construct their building, they have a fence that runs along their property line, and they'll have a little bit of landscaping or a walkway in there as well. So they've still given themselves that buffer, but so they're not quite up to the property line, but that gives them a little bit of room. Both of those the north property line backs up to the cemetery. It's got the fence. It's also got some growth on kind of both sides of the fence that kind of help buffer it from the cemetery side. And then to the west is really the parking lot in a field that's attached to the church that's really not going anywhere anytime soon. So it does get closer to the property lines, but it doesn't really get closer to any structures, any residential or anything like that. Next slide. The existing site on the property, as you can kind of see, maybe not the best since it's got the grading in there. Next slide. So you'll see here are the two main areas where we've kind of focused on site circulation, which is again kind of one of our focus points going into this with the petitioner was we knew we needed this to improve in some way out there on busy days. There's a lot of cars going a lot of different directions in there. There's a lot of stacking needed too. And again, it's an existing site, an existing situation. We're glad they're busy. And those are all good things, but we wanted to see how we can improve this as much as possible within the current confines of that site. So they did have KLOA do a traffic study and provide some recommendations for this. I think the most important of which is the west or the left side of this image on the west side of the site is really pushing those pay booths back. So currently they're actually in line with that most western drive access. So if you veered a little bit off course if you were turning in there, you'd go straight into some bollards and then those pay booths. So that was probably the most dangerous situation out there. It also created stacking that kind of went from that point to the east and created some backups blocking the gas pumps and some other entrances. So they pushed those in, so that creates a little bit more stacking. It also has provided, again, to get those booths out of the drive aisle there. So to do that, they have taken down, there was like a pre-wash canopy that's out there that they've demolished, so that's provided them a little bit of extra space. They've also expanded the pavement a little bit to the west area. It is a little bit of a detention area there right now, so they're providing some of their detention underground for that, and they've gone through MWRD as well as our village engineer for the engineering aspects of this. On the east side of this property, is the circulation really for the detail center. So they've actually decreased the curb cut along Oak Park Avenue. That allows a little bit of space for stacking into that detail center. There's usually not a lot of stacking there. It's not as much as the car wash services, but they do want to have the ability for a couple cars to stack there without creating any issues on the street or without blocking the exit to the car wash. So they've delineated some lanes there that keep the cars going into the detail center. Next slide. So as we saw before, they've provided sidewalks along 159th and Oak Park Avenue. They'll also be running sidewalks to the church property and along the first kind of eastern part of the church property as well, but on the public frontage. And this is really for parking, which I'll get into shortly. They basically use that for their parking. So they've provided sidewalks not only along the public frontage along 159th Oak Park Avenue, but they also wanted to connect those to the church parking lot. So that way, anyone parking over there has the ability to walk over to the Delta Sonic property. They don't quite have the agreement worked out with the church yet to connect the kind of private sidewalk, not on the public frontage. They're working with them, but the church has a little bit of a approval process. So that we're not approving that as part of this plan, but they are kind of actively working to make that connection to the parking lot with that private sidewalk that runs to the north on this image. Next slide. As part of the sidewalk on the corner of 159th and Oak Park Avenue, part of the sidewalk goes onto the private property. So part of this approval is a plat of easement for that sidewalk that allows the public sidewalk to go in there. It'll be maintained and owned by the village, but it's technically on that private property. They did that with the exception, or instead of dedicating the property. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to dedicate property because there's a lot of changes to legal documents and state mortgages and things like that, the financing documents. So this was kind of the easiest way for the village to get their sidewalk there in that intersection. Next slide. The other aspect of this that we focused on besides the circulation that was kind of lacking was the landscaping. So the site's fairly bare out there. There's some small landscaping, shrubs along 159th and Oak Park Avenue, kind of around the light poles, around the signs. There's a couple trees that are kind of internal to the site, but there really wasn't much there. And with a lot of these redevelopment sites where we get changes to, that's kind of one of the things we want to work with. And we actually did that diagonal from this property on 159th and Oak Park Avenue, where we really beefed up the landscaping on that property. So this will be a good kind of, two of the four corners will have some really nice landscaping and kind of been upgraded to our current codes with those. So they've added a variety of different street trees on the public frontage, as well as trees along their private frontage. They've also added a variety of shrubs kind of throughout the site, around the drive aisles, kind of help buffer everything and make it really a nice site from both the outside if you're on the roadway or you're within the site. So I think total they've added at least 40 canopy trees here. And again, a variety of different shrubs that are on there. This doesn't really comply with most of our landscape codes still, especially a lot of the internal landscaping. So many of you that have been on the Plan Commission have seen kind of new build sites and the way they come in landscape islands, foundational landscaping, things like that. This doesn't have that. Again, it's kind of a part of doing a redevelopment is you're not going to fully meet your current codes, but what you're really trying to do is how can you improve it as best as possible without really causing any interference to the existing site or business. So I think we've done a good job here. There's not too much extra asphalt or land out there to really install much, but they've really, I think, beefed up, especially that perimeter landscaping quite a bit. So they're asking for waivers, obviously, from the landscape code for that internal landscaping, but they're kind of countered that by beefing up the exterior to the extent possible. Next slide. Architecturally, the biggest change here is obviously the detail shop, which you can see on your right there. It's kind of going to be a mezzanine level on that. There's a lot of glass. I think it looks pretty attractive. It makes it a little bit more modern compared to how it did look before a lot of those changes, which had a little bit more dated 80s look to it. So I think this really makes that side along Oak Park Avenue, kind of makes that an attractive frontage instead of just kind of the back of the building now. So they've added some signage there as well as, again, that addition, that kind of two-story detail center there. The convenience store side of this, it's not a large addition. It basically looks like what's out there now with brick around the base and then some glass on top. It's just kind of a continuation of what's out there now. But the detail center, they really kind of rethought this through and kind of make that Oak Park Avenue a more attractive side of this building. So again, a lot of glass. There is some brick there on the base, as you can see the connection between the detail center and the car wash. And then they've continued their kind of blue metal look as well. Next slide. So that shows you the brick and kind of the glass right there. Signage, so they are adding signage now to that Oak Park Avenue frontage where they added the detail center storefront. So they've added a Delta Sonic sign as well as a detailing sign, which we're considering a directional sign. It's a little bit bigger, this sign as well as the next directional signs. They're a little bit bigger than where code allows for directional signs. So our code's typically at 6 square feet for a wall sign or 4 square feet for a ground sign. Those work in most circumstances where you have vehicles. Let's say you're directing them to a drive-through somewhere. You'll see them at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, where, especially when you mix those into shopping centers, it helps get cars, and you kind of have vehicles that are near those entrances that it works. So here, with them really trying to help the circulation on the site, they got these a little bit bigger. They really want to make the wording stand out, not for advertising purposes, but again, to make sure people are going in the right direction signage-wise, so you can see what lane you're supposed to be in if you're going to a pay booth or if you're an unlimited customer, or if you want to go get detailing, you can kind of see where you're going before you get there. Even from the roadway, I think that makes an important difference. So they haven't made them too big, but they are slightly larger than what the code requires. They also, in discussions with them, reduced the size of those oval signs. So originally they had proposed ones that were near 28 square feet. So they've reduced that now down to 17.55 square feet for those ovals. So they won't be quite as large as they were before, but I think still be large enough that you can see the wording on. Next slide.
Hey, this is Kayla West. I actually have one quick comment at this point, if it's okay. Just in the original packet that was sent out, I think it was page 5 of that portion. It said they were recommending a variance so that the signs be, and the number wasn't filled in. It's just 2 X's. So I don't know if that matters for the record keeping purposes, but that might want to be corrected.
Sure. Yeah, I was hoping nobody would catch that, and I could just change it on the next staff report. But thanks for calling out my placeholder on the square foot. But yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'll have that fixed on the public. Oh no, I'm just joking. So we'll change that on the next staff report, and then so at the public hearing, when you reference it, it'll stay the right number. But it's that for the detailing sign, it's 18.25 square feet, and then for the oval directional signs, those will be 17.55 square feet. So we were a little bit in a hurry on this one, and I had a placeholder in there because we were discussing the changes. So I just never went back and updated that. So thanks for catching that, though. Where was I at? Going to go to the next slide. Parking is obviously very minimal on this site. So currently there's 4 parking spaces. They're right in front of that convenience store. They actually have to lose one of those spaces total because they need to combine 2 of them to make an ADA compliance space. So they'll have a total of 3 spaces, one of which will be an ADA space at the end of this. So there's really not much room to add parking. And again, we don't have a very specific code. We've been doing a lot of gas stations lately, but so you might all already know this. But for the record, we don't really have very specific code, but we're kind of using our zoning code to help guide us. Based on that rough guidance, I came up with about 19 parking spaces they would need. And again, they only have 3. So in order to counter this, they've had an agreement kind of long-term with the church next door. That's continued again, and I believe their current terms run through 2022. But I believe they have a good kind of long-standing relationship with that church and that parking. I think it benefits everyone for Delta Sonic. All their employees go park over there, so customers don't really park there. And that provides them parking. It provides the church some revenue too. So I think that's been a win-win situation. And that's kind of how they're countering their lack of parking on the site, is that at least all their employees can go park off-site. The 3 spaces that they're proposing by the convenience store are used by people, but this isn't a site that's heavily used as a convenience store. So typically, if you're going to their convenience store, you're probably getting gas or getting a car wash or getting a detail, and you run over to the convenience store. So they have your normal chips and pop, but it's not kind of like your 7-Eleven. You might go in there in the morning and get your whole fill up. So it doesn't attract as much as the convenience market on this site. And again, most people are just at the gas pumps already getting fuel for their vehicles. So they don't need quite as much parking there. And again, that parking agreement with the church kind of helps them with their staff. So they've requested that variation, and that's an open item for discussion. Staff's going to be recommending condition of approval basically for that variance based on them having a parking agreement with a neighboring property owner. So, next slide. Lastly is the lighting on the site. So they'll be installing new lights on the site as well as replacing some of the fixtures on the existing site. So this will all come into compliance with our new lighting ordinance we worked on last year with downcast lights, full cutoff, so you don't really see any glare off-site on neighboring properties or the roadway from these lights. Canopy lights, so everything will be kind of new out there in terms of the lighting. compliant with our code. So that's it for my staff report.
Okay, thank you, Dan. At this time, I'd like to ask if the petitioner is present, and if so, do they have anything they would like to add at this time?
Hi, this is Jeremy Brooks from Delta Sonic.
Yes, Jeremy, is it?
Yes. Yeah, Jeremy Brooks.
Do you have anything to add then, Jeremy?
No, not at this time. Just the upgrades obviously we're looking at doing for the site are to improve all of that circulation and stacking for both detail and car wash. That's the main purpose of what we're proposing for this.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here tonight, Jeremy, and thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if they have any comments or discussion, beginning with Commissioner West.
No, I don't.
Commissioner Gaskell. Commissioner Gaskell.
I'm sorry, nothing at this time.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Stanton.
Just that, it's nice to see that, Delta Sonic is going to be making improvements to the property. It's a great business, and it's nice to see. So that's it.
Okay. Thanks. Commissioner Manning.
Yes, I would like to say the site plan looks pretty good for to alleviate the congestion, and I appreciate the proposed sidewalk, for people to walk around that corner. But it looks great.
Okay. Thank you. And this is Chairman Gray speaking, and I'll echo some of the comments. I do agree with Commissioner Stan. Delta Sonic does do bang-up business in the community, and we appreciate that. And I do like the new layout, which improves the site circulation and basically helps that flow into and out of the site. So I think that's a really good add. And the directional signs, I know they're a little bit large. I'm glad you reduced some of those. But I do think that sign overage is probably necessary to keep the vehicular traffic in their respective lanes, primarily because the site is very tight. So I think that is a good necessary modification. And I agree with the staff report that mentioned the parking study where you have frequent turnover at the gas pumps, which kind of has a dual purpose of people going in, shopping at the convenience store, as well as the parking for staff based on the agreement you guys have with Trinity Lutheran. So, and I do hope that you're able to get that approved for that sidewalk as well, because I concur with what Commissioner Manny said in regards to the sidewalk as well. So, but overall, it's a great business. I think these improvements will be a definite upgrade. With that, I'd like to turn it back to staff to see so that they can review the open items and the direction on these requests.
Sure. So our open items were really just with the variances, the 4 variances that they'll be requesting, and then the landscape waivers. So it sounds like we're all good on those. They've kind of, like you said, it's a tight site. They're kind of working with what they have out here as an existing site. So we kind of improved this to the best we can, and that's some of what we have to do on these kind of infill and redevelopment sites. So sounds like there's no issues. That's it.
Okay. So with that, this concludes the workshop review of the request for item number 2. There will be a public hearing on this matter at the Thursday, June 18th, 2020, regularly scheduled Plan Commission meeting. So Jeremy Brooks, please get with staff to sort out the details so you can be in attendance. And we'll see you at the June 18th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks again for your time. At this time, I would like to ask if there's any additional public comments. Hearing none, I will.
We didn't have anybody call in for comments.
Okay, excellent. So staff, at this time, do you have any communications for the good of the order?
We don't. Next meeting is June 18th, like we said. That'll still be a remote meeting like we're doing right now. Come July, we may start to turn at that point to start maybe moving back into the boardroom for our meetings. But for now, for June 18th, that'll be a remote meeting still.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dan. This is Chairman Gray. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
This is Commissioner West. So moved.
Do I hear a second?
This is Commissioner Manny. I second that motion.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Manny. We'll take a voice vote. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. This meeting is adjourned at 7:57 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.